Okay. And Mark, you want to introduce yourself and go into your presentation?
Yeah, hi. I, what I'm going to do for the next 10 minutes or so is introduce the new areas of focus statement by the Rotary Foundation on the new uh, area of focus environment. There are some surprising things here. This just came in like 4 or 5 days ago. And so it's pretty interesting to take a look at it. So I'm going to share my screen and take it right off the document. Here we go. There it is. So as they say here, we cannot do global grants in the environment area of focus until July of 2021. But and the surprising thing about what they've done, uh, they had already scattered environmental possibilities in the other areas of focus. And the assumption was that they would just bring them together in this final statement about environment for global grants. But they've actually gone through it and they've done a lot more than that. They've really developed it as an area of focus. Uh, so here at the very beginning is a statement of purpose, goals, and parameters for eligibility. Uh, Here's what they've got, and these are the main areas that they want to focus on. So protecting and restoring land, coastal, marine, and freshwater resources, that's pretty broad, uh, but look at some of the ways they've defined it. Protecting and restoring terrestrial ecosystems and improving their resiliency through initiatives such as blah, blah, blah. So this is right out of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Some of the buzzwords, the keywords that they're using, terrestrial ecosystems, resiliency, uh, deforestation, these kinds of words uh, are right out of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And this is important because this is actually a very progressive statement of the environmental area of focus, much more so than Rotary has ever been willing to do in the past. So, here's another one, protecting biodiversity, restoring habitats. Uh, these are all supporting strategies and targeted initiatives to improve aquifer and groundwater recharging. So they're fairly moderate, they're fairly standard sustainable development goals language, but the fact that Rotary is using them in this context is surprising. So they also, number two is enhancing the capacity of communities and local governments to support natural resource management and conversation and conservation. Uh, Again, they're using the term local governments. And, and this again is important, especially in the United States, because there will be a lot of pushback from some quarters in using that kind of language. Mitigating human wildlife conflict through ecologically sound and peaceful resolutions. Uh, so number three is supporting agroecology and sustainable agriculture, fishing, and aquaculture practices to improve ecological health. So these are the statements of intention of goals, parameters, the fields that the Rotary Foundation is willing to work in. So the third uh, the third part of this, I want to get into this. Uh, I'm sorry. This is the one that is particularly, let's say, progressive for the Rotary Foundation to take up. It's number four, but it specifically, explicitly states addressing the causes of climate change and climate disruption and supporting solutions to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. Now, for everybody on this call, there is nothing revolutionary about this or radical or political. But for a lot of people in Rotary, these are very, very, very loaded, political, disruptive goals that are being stated by the Rotary leadership. So it's important that, you know, they are supporting this kind of move for Rotarians. So the other thing I wanted to highlight, you guys can all go through these on your own. So there's no point in me dwelling on them to great extent. I do want to highlight number 6, supporting education to promote behaviors that protect the environment. That opens up an area of where a lot of us feel that Rotary can have the greatest impact. And that is the field of education, especially for interactors, for middle school, for high school, you know, everybody in that area, for RILA, supporting education that specifically addresses the environment. This is an incredibly important initiative by the Rotary Foundation. I want to mention the things that they're not interested in supporting, and especially some of the things that we've been involved in. Notice number 4, tree plantings that are not part of a larger ecological framework and strategy. That is something we might want to think about.
Mark, just real quickly.
Yeah, stop me anywhere to talk about these.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, on these, if you kind of bring it back down a little bit, it's, well, it kind of says it right there. It doesn't mean that, doesn't say that they or Rotary is not interested in these. It's that they're just not eligible for global grant funding.
Correct.
So these areas, other areas that maybe not quite as standalone as some of the things above, they're still things we can get into, and we can use local district or club funds to take on. So, but the other thing that you mentioned is tree plantings, because I think a lot of the things that Pili is doing is definitely part of a larger ecological framework and strategy. And you may have to voice that a little bit stronger, but I would think that those kinds of things, I mean, I think there are ways to deal with some of this.
No, I totally agree. And, you know, part of what causes global grants to not be approved is not the content of the global grant per se, or the content of the budget, or the content of the funding. The problem is that we do not enunciate our projects effectively. And, you know, I think a lot of, if I remember correctly, Pili's tree planting project on Oahu is part of a larger strategy that has to do with the watersheds and preservation of the national park. And that's certainly the case on Maui, not so much in the project per se that we're doing right now, but most of the rehabilitation projects on Maui that seek to replace invasive species with native habitat, native plants, are taking place in watersheds. And it is part of a larger project to, you know, preserve those watersheds, but also to preserve them by getting rid of invasive species, including feral pigs, and replacing the invasive species with native plants. So that is the broader strategy, but you have to enunciate that. You can't just take it for granted. right? When you're doing a global grant project. Other things, I know that one group of Rotarians on the mainland is doing a lot of projects that are involved with rehabilitating rivers. But again, they're talking about single event cleanups, single event projects that don't really have a follow-up, don't have a broader strategy, right? And some of this other stuff is obvious, food distribution programs, they don't really qualify that at all. I would think that a tree planting project that also involved providing fresh fruits for food banks and that sort of thing is part of a broader strategy. Outdoor recreational activities. And the one that is really puzzling in a way is number 9. Projects that involve only infrastructure, equipment, or training in how to use that equipment. Normally, Rotary has been pretty strict about equipment only projects, but we've always gotten around that by having a training component. And that apparently is not going to be enough going forward. So that's a very interesting development as well. The main thing I wanted to highlight, however, is that Rotary is really taking a stand here. And in a lot of ways, the leadership is ahead of Rotarians in identifying climate change as a major area of focus. It has been in the Sustainable Development Goals for a long time. And I think a lot of us have been thinking in those terms forever. But this is a new development for Rotary, and I think it's worth noting. So that's it for me. I'm going to come back to the group and stop sharing. I wanted you to be aware of that and check it out on your own term, your own time. It's there. Just look it up under the Grant Center on the Rotary website. So back to you, John, or Naomi, or anyone.
Questions from anybody?
Reactions? Mariko.
So Mark, so does this mean that because I'm sure that there are a lot of potential projects that we can do in Hawaii. So do you agree that there's really good opportunities for us to get the global grant funding?
Well, I think that there's still a lot of resistance to so-called reverse grants. I have one going right now in Japan, and I'm getting a lot of pushback from the Rotary Foundation on that. The idea being that it's basically rich countries supporting rich countries. So why aren't you doing projects in less developed countries? But no, I think, if there's one area where Hawaii could definitely, try for a reverse grant, this is definitely it. We are probably one of the most vulnerable areas on the globe. And if anybody doubted that, look at the unemployment statistics in Hawaii right now.
Well, yeah. So what is the criteria, for that reverse grant?
Well, you still have to have a host partner and an international partner.
Yeah.
So in the case of my grant in Japan, it's the Rotary Club of Kihei Wailea as the principal international partner, and the Rotary Club of I think Kyoto East or someone like that as the host.
Mm-hmm.
And right away the Rotary Foundation says, these are the 2 richest zones in the world. So why are you giving grants to each other? And, you know, the response to that is that, you know, this is a grant that's in the area that was affected by the tsunami. And it's one of the most economically depressed areas in Japan. And it specifically addresses the trauma of the people who were left homeless by the tsunami. So it's not exactly rich helping rich.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
No, that's very interesting. I think, you know, yeah, it's the area worth exploring, but I don't know.
And I mean,
Yeah.
on the other side of that, you know, I'm thinking of a project that we did on Maui to establish hiking trails on state land that adjacent to the boat ramp in Kihei. And basically, the pushback we've gotten from a lot of community groups was, you know, why are you spending charitable money on building jogging trails for rich people? You know, point taken, but
Okay, thanks. Gee, we've got 3 people from Maui. Hi, Vanessa.
hi, Vanessa.
Okay, so back to Kauai. John was going to share on the food waste initiative that he's involved with.
Yeah, that's
Okay, yeah, I don't have anything to show you. Let me see if I can get, oh, there we go. Get my notes anyway. Because I'm kind of in the middle of doing a lot of this. First, I just want to build on what Mark said. I'm really, 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 really happy for what Rotary's doing. It makes me very, very, very proud to be a Rotarian. And I'm also very pleased with the response that I've been getting from some of the groups, the international groups that I've been talking with. And a couple of those, if any of you want to get more information on what's going on right now, and the other thing is how this came about. There's the Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group, ESHRAG, which has been around for 5 years, maybe now 4 or 5 years.
longer than that before they changed their name.
Yeah, and then along with that, just recently, ESHRAG started creating or establishing regional district chapters. And so we have a Big West chapter of ESHRAG that meets monthly. And some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about, we've been talking about it at both of those levels. And then the final thing in that is that though I never got a good handle on what the exact structure is, organizational structure, ESHRAG is also partnering with another entity called Project Drawdown, and I'll talk about Project Drawdown. I think we might even had a little brief presentation on that a while back on a number of issues. And Project Drawdown really essentially deals with impacting and reducing the impacts of climate change. So again, this goes back to what Mark said. This is a pretty strong statement from Rotary on addressing climate change. Okay, whoops. As I mentioned, Rotary is working with Project Drawdown on establishing a whole list of potential actions and projects to reduce the impacts of greenhouse gases on our planet. And in that book or in that list, reducing food waste is number 3. And so as a former solid waste manager, composter, and being very much involved in or interested in food waste, I kind of jumped on that one. Right now, there's a significant potential for reducing greenhouse gas emissions through reduction and alternative management of food waste. And here on Kauai, we're looking at partnering with some local environmental groups to divert food waste from our landfills. And so what I call Get the Organics Out is an effort that's going to focus on reducing the volumes of food waste generated by our residents and businesses on Kauai and diverting from the landfill what we can't reduce. In addition, as a part of the SRAD Drawdown Solutions Task Force, we have set up a subgroup focusing on food waste, and we'll be meeting, I think we're meeting tomorrow, the Drawdown Solutions Task Force, and talking about how we can take that issue to a larger scale, the international, national and international level. Here in the islands on Kauai, reducing the amount of wet organic material decomposing in the landfills has been identified by numerous environmental organizations as one of the most effective means of addressing the impacts of climate change. And this is because of the anaerobic decomposition of organic material in a landfill that is without oxygen generates methane, which is a very highly potent greenhouse gas. So keeping the food waste out of the landfills is a major solution that we're looking at. So right now, I've already talked with, and I'm partnering with Zero Waste Kauai, the Kauai Climate Action Coalition, and the County of Kauai Solid Waste Division to put together a number of food waste reduction and diversion activities. And part of that effort will be to reach out to the other clubs on Kauai and get all of Kauai involved in this effort. And then ultimately, I'd kind of like to look at taking the effort statewide. We will be doing a lot of research and documentation. There are a lot of other programs similar to what we're talking about that have already been implemented. A couple of states have already taken on eliminating food waste from the landfills. A number of communities have. So it's not anything new, but it is something we need to tackle here. And then ultimately, this is a project that we can use, duplicate, and take to other parts of the world where they're not quite as able to handle the food waste as we are here. So that's kind of what we're looking at. If you've got any questions, or if you'd like to join the effort, let me know and I'll keep you in the loop. But if you got any questions, I'm open for questions.
So John, how do you do that? How do you eliminate waste?
Okay, there's a number of ways that here on Kauai or in developed communities such as Hawaii and most of the mainland, there's usually 3 or 4 elements of a diversion program. The first one, and sometimes the most difficult depending on who's running the show, is basically implement pass resolutions, whatever, restricting or banning food waste from landfills. Usually these are phased in bans, and they focus initially on large quantities of commercial food waste. So that's the first thing. By eliminating it from the landfills, basically all of a sudden you're creating incentives for local entrepreneurs to come in and address that issue and take the food waste and do something else with it. On the other end of the spectrum, it's primarily an education issue, but it's focusing on reduction, both consumption habits, purchasing habits, retail stores, wholesale stores, promoting buying in bulk, promoting buying, preparing, serving only what you need. So it's a reduction side. And then there's the part in the middle. And again, this is where there's a lot of other benefits. And that's, I guess, what you'd almost call the reuse side. And that's working within the system, because there's a lot of people out there already doing this. And it's like food banks. It's basically trying to divert that food waste that you can't reduce, but you don't want to put in the landfill, and it is still consumable, to people that can use it, that need it. So there's all three of those elements: reduction, reuse, and diversion. And within there, on the diversion side, and kind of the reuse side, there's the composting issues. Working with local composters, establishing facilities that can handle food waste, and besides the pulling that out of the landfill, getting those organics back into the soil helps sequester the carbon and gives you extra benefits on the climate change side. So anybody wants to talk any more about it, I'd be glad to get an email conversation going, let you know what we're doing and who we're talking to, and keep you informed of the research we're doing as far as what's going on in other places and how we can duplicate it here.
So John, so has any Rotary clubs in Kauai actually doing any projects related to this food waste initiative?
Right now, the primary project is going to be education and awareness. There's a number of issues that are within Project Drawdown and some that aren't in Project Drawdown. There are other things that other research that I've done that we will try to promote. We will also, as part of this group of partners, Zero Waste Kauai and the Climate Action Coalition, and the County of Kauai Solid Waste Division, will be probably talking with council people to see what we can do to restructure policy. A lot of these issues are kind of policy decisions. And then the final thing is working on the bigger scale with ESHRAG and the regional chapter, and seeing how we can bring to bear the powers of Rotary, the impact of Rotary, the capabilities of Rotary to get some of this stuff done. So, and there's one thing I wanted to note, this is just a little funny thing, because Mark was talking about it. I like I said, I'm part of the ESHRAG group, and we meet with them monthly, and we're Zoom meetings. And there's this one lady in our group that's from Idaho, And in Idaho and within the Idaho District Rotary Group, we can't even use the words climate change.
Exactly. John, can I jump in here for 1 second?
Yeah.
Yeah, I attended a Zoom meeting that was basically infiltrated by a bunch of conservative Rotarians. And the point of that meeting, I don't know if it was Big West Estrag or another one, but about half of that meeting was devoted to a talk by the president of ESRAG about how to talk about climate without being political. And it was very interesting because a lot of the words, a lot of the phrases that are now coming up in that description of the environment area of focus in the Rotary Foundation statement were actually words that they told us we shouldn't use. So, and that's how sensitive people are at ESRAG to being, to pushback from conservative Rotarians. So, and the interesting thing here is that now, we don't have to fight that fight because the Rotary Foundation has basically come out and said, climate change is what it is. It's a scientific fact. And this is how we're going to address it. And the language they're using is, as I said, it's right in line with United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And which many conservatives feel is like, socialists talking out of the side of their mouths. So it's an incredible development for us and something to celebrate from our point of view.
Can I add something there, if that's possible? Sure. So, Mark, thank you so much for explaining a little bit in what are the implications that that it will come for clubs and Rotarians and its RAC group, for example, like the implications of having been have the good to go from Rotary Foundation and Rotary International. So because you mentioned that over the years it's been very political just to talk about climate change. So I see that in the list that, because I saw the news, I saw the article just 2 days ago, and it listed advocacy. No, not advocacy, but advocating. So how does that put us? Because since I'm at Rotaract, the philosophy, the Rotary, is that we don't do advocacy because we don't do lobbying and because we are not supposed to be political. So what it will be our role? I don't know if you know the answer. It's okay if not. But what it will be our role as a community servants in the way of doing that advocacy that Rotary is mentioning in this document? Like, are we allowed to do that as a Rotarians, or are we not allowed to do that? Like, it's like some sort of gray area there. And if you don't know the answer, I would like to know if we can have probably like a speaker that can actually go through the wording and explain to us like what are our responsibilities as an eco club, for example, for my club, or like a ESRAC group to handle things properly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so one interesting thing is that there's quite a bit of overlap at the Rotary Active Group level. There's quite a bit of overlap between the ESRAG and the RAG for Peace. And so I thought about doing this earlier, but let me put this up very quickly. This is a project that came out of a collaboration between ESRAG and the Rotary Action Group for Peace. And it is led by a nonprofit called New Gen Peace Builders. But the point of this project is that the New Gen Peace Builders has developed a curriculum for use in high schools on climate and climate change and how to advocate for climate change through the schools. And the challenge is to align with the policies of whatever school you're working with. So on Maui, if we're working, for example, with a middle school, we would have to sell this to their administration. But we have the right to do that. We now have the authority from Rotary to go out and do this kind of advocacy. And so basically what these people are offering is that they will provide this curriculum free to any teacher who goes through their training program. It's a 3-hour program, but then they get the entire curriculum that they can use in their lesson plans. And, so this is one, and the thing is that this project is being supported at the very highest levels of the Rotary Foundation. Basically, their main backer is Peter Kyle, who is about to become a director of Rotary International, but has been very active in the Rotary Foundation as a trustee and as a representative of Rotary at the United Nations. But this is the kind of thing that we can do, right? Also, in that.
Let me ask you another question. Let me cut you there, just so we don't.
Sure.
So what I'm gonna give you a more progressive example. Let's say that there is a bill about to be approved or passed or discussed in the Senate or here in the state level. Can we, like, let's say in our social media, in our Facebook or our Instagram, ask people to sign for that bill because it's supporting climate change?
Sure,
Really?
why not?
Well, I think.
Well, because I thought that we
Wait,
weren't supposed.
Really, I think the
Uh-huh.
issue is more, we've got to walk a fine line here. And so
That's
rather
what I'm
than
confused.
rather than asking for support, directly asking for people to vote yes on a bill, we educate people. We basically show them the issues and make recommendations. We don't come out directly, and I mean, actually reading some of that stuff that Mark put up, I don't even know if that holds anymore. It seems like we could actually advocate for the passage of the bill. But I know in dealing with legislators and with the public, we can, there's a fine line between advocacy and education. And as long as we focus on education, I think we're cool.
I see what
Yeah,
you
I
mean.
agree.
That you see that in the list, in their list advocacy or advocating. So it's not that I'm trying to do that, but I know that if I come with this list to my members, who many of them are like a more in the left side thinker, like a more, you know what I mean? They're gonna think that they can do it, and I don't know how to explain whether or not they can or we are allowed, because I know that before we weren't supposed to do that type of we wasn't supposed to do that wasn't supposed to be the Rotarian behavior, if that's a thing. I don't know if you understand what I mean.
So,
We don't have to talk about this right now.
no, I think it's,
Okay.
I think it's important to talk about it. So look at number 2, where it says enhancing the capacity of communities and local governments to support natural resource management and conservation. So, look at the content of the bill. If it's a bipartisan bill and it advances.
Wait, just stop right there. Mark, where you just were on climate change?
Uh-huh.
I think it's down a little.
Oh, it's up a little.
Maybe it's 4, whatever it
Because
is.
you know what else? Like, if we are allowed to do
Wait,
advocacy.
right here, right there under supporting, you keep popping around.
So this is another idea that it just comes to my mind. If we are allowed to do advocacy, we wouldn't be a 501c3 anymore. Why 501c4 anymore? Because we can actually do advocacy. We are like a community service, most of the Rotary clubs, and we follow under the for, because we can do advocacy. I don't want to be controversial. I just want to, because it can be confusing, and because it's
No, but it
new, we don't
says-
really know what is the right thing.
You know, so Pili, what is the content of the legislation?
No. I'm just giving an example. Like it's
Okay.
just like a
Okay.
yeah, like something that
Wait.
comes to my mind.
Right
I
there,
think-
right there, it said creating awareness. Now, is creating awareness advocating for something? No, it's creating awareness. We can create awareness.
Can I say something as well? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay. You're not speaking for Rotary. You're not saying this is Rotary's position. You're not out there. You're just putting these ideas. If you look at what Mark has on the screen, and Mark, can you send us a copy of this? I haven't seen it. But what you're doing is you're
It's a statement by Rotary International.
but
This
you're
is-
not speaking for Rotary. You're speaking in your voice.
yeah. Things got very quiet all of a sudden. Am I losing my? Can you all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh,
Can you
okay,
just hear me?
okay. Yeah, Pili, I think as long as you don't say Rotary wants you to vote for this bill,
Exactly.
yeah. But as a Rotarian, you can certainly say that. I want you to vote for that bill.
And what you can do is you can take this information, Mark, can you scroll it some more, please? You can take this information and give all the reasons why. And allow the individuals to make up their own mind, but you're giving them
Yeah.
the information that they can use and make.
Roz, we lost you. You hit mute for some reason.
I'm sorry. You're just
Yes.
not making a stand saying, I'm speaking for Rotary International and this is what Rotary International is doing and this is what they're saying. You're speaking in your voice and in your club's voice.
Right.
Does that help, Phil?
I think this issue is going to come up, and not just with us because we're pretty much all on the same page, but um, when this thing goes more national than international, I think the international community is already fully behind this issue, but there are some people in the U.S. that are still deniers. I mean, so I think initially anyway, the idea is things like it says in there. We can educate, we can create awareness, we can explain the pros and cons, we can do all of those things. And I guess what we can't do right now is say, Rotary says vote yes on this bill. I guess like Reese was saying, there's an ordinance up before City Council. So we can educate about that ordinance and we can create awareness about the issues involved in that ordinance. But as a club, I don't think you could say vote yes. But then Reese could get up there and say, personally, you can give all your credentials. I'm an environmental scientist. I'm an educator. I'm a member of Rotary, and I want you to vote yes, because we can do it that way too.
Yeah. Also, Pili, I think that on your website, on your social media page on Facebook, if you are up there as the Eco Club of, Kaka'ako, Honolulu, and you say there is a bill currently that will allow restaurants to give unused food to food banks. You don't have to say support it. because it's already implicit in the fact that you're talking about it.
I understand, guys, all the things that you're saying, and I totally agree. So I've been in Rotary since, I don't know, like probably not as long as all of you, but I know like there is like a fine line where you suppose like the way that you should behave to don't jeopardize Rotary International image. And that's the only part that I'm concerned about this, because it can be misunderstanding by different people. For example, a bill like you mentioned, Mark, about I don't know, like a single-use plastic, where I don't know, where restaurants are being like motive to just give it by request. That's like a very simple bill that doesn't cause harm in like that big. But if you just come like, okay, we're gonna close the oil company in Hawaii, let's help us pass that bill. That is very political, and that is a bigger issue. That is like a, where do we draw the line, whether or not we can wear a Rotary t-shirt and say we as a club are supporting this, or we are not, or we don't, or we just don't say it, or we just say like, okay, this is the bill, take a look. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying, because I think that it's not because I just want to leave it like clear. It's not that I want to go in the extreme side and do it, but I know that in general, many people who support the environment is very extreme, and they can just use these things as a piece to just and like probably manipulate the entire spirit of the approval to do something extreme. So I just want to have like a better understanding in what is actually Rotary International aiming the clubs to do, and where to draw the line and what is correct or proper in this case. For example, they say addressing environmental justice issues and public health concerns. Like that's very progressive compared to what we are normally used to from Rotary.
Yes,
So
exactly.
like, so environmental justice is like a big deal, and it groups like so many issues that it also, like for example, in countries like Colombia, it addresses people or environmental advocates getting killed just because they are against or mining or fracking. So you know what I mean? So it is more complex than just like oh, let's just approach in the educating side. Let's just don't kill people. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So I just like, I'm very excited though, because I can see that Rotary is taking like a path of more progressive view. But I may be just a little confused about how it's going to affect our clubs, in a special our eco club, and what are the things that we are allowed to do or not allowed to do. And I won't say anymore.
Okay, I'm
You're-
just,
This is exactly, and I think this is exactly the kind of issue that we need to talk about in SRAG and also in our group. How far can we go? And I think the role of Rotarian action groups is to push the envelope. We cannot at this point say that Rotary International wants you to divest from oil companies, because I don't think they've divested from oil companies themselves. But I mean, so in a lot of ways, I think as an official position, the position would be to keep it positive, but at the same time, because they are using the language of the Sustainable Development Goals. I think it's possible for the Rotarian action groups to push the envelope on that. And you really hit something, Keely, because I totally agree with you. I mean, the real issues are things like, what do we do about Exxon's behavior in Nigeria? or Colombia.
And I don't think you're going to tell them what to do. You're going to put all of the information out that you have.
Yeah,
If the club, you might have some members who are for it and some members who are not. You're not going to go say, well, you're in Rotary, you got to be this way. You're not going to do that. Everybody you've got your own opinion and your own ideas. Rotary is not, it's not going to brainwash you into thinking that way. But just the way you present it, you're presenting it from your standpoint, you're presented it from information that you have. You're not saying Rotary says this and it's stern, this is the way it is. That's not what you're doing. But just get the information, know the information, and go through it and present the information.
I understand what you're saying, Ross, but to give you an example, like a few months ago, we used to have a member, and he was like a very politically involved in all the actions in Hawaii. And he said that we should go wearing our Rotary teachers to one of the march that was advocating for a bill. So I had to stop that because I told him, like, you as a human and as a citizen of the United States, you can go, you can wear whatever teacher you want, and you can advocate for whatever you think is better, like in your beliefs. But we as a group cannot go wearing our teachers or as a group to advocate for anything, because that was my understanding. So that's where is my confusion lies on, right?
Well, you understand it, so it's no confusion. You are correct. You're absolutely correct. You can go individually, you can go as a group, but why do you have to wear your Rotary shirt? What you're saying is that Rotary is behind us on this. I represent Rotary. Just do your thing.
yeah. And I also think that, again, how you identify your club has a lot to do with it, because if you guys show up at any event wearing your shirt, with your club name on it, that already makes a kind of statement.
But it's not to say that you want to divest yourself from Rotary. You don't want to do that. I wear my Rotary pin all the time, everywhere I go. So people know that you're Rotarian, but you're not going to go out and put yourself on a pedestal with whatever and say, hey, Rotary says this and I'm a Rotarian and we need to do it this way. We need to do it that way. Just have the information, give that information to your club, that you and your club make a decision on how you want to handle it and how you want to go out and do it. Don't let someone say, you come out and you wear your Rotary shirts and you show them that Rotary is behind this. You don't know that Rotary is behind this.
Right.
Are we complicating the matter even more?
Probably. That's what we tend to do, at least in my club. I'm just preparing for what is coming.
Sure.
Well, get your club together and get Mark there to talk and bring his information and get all the information you can and present it to the club, and just have an open mic, an open discussion where they can talk and ask questions of this group maybe, and voice their concerns, and that's fine.
Yeah, and the other thing is to be open to other opinions. A lot of what annoys conservatives in Rotary is that when they show up for a meeting like this, they get shouted down, and they hate that. They want to be respected, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, at the Honolulu Club, we've always had a conservation, an environmental committee, and when I got there, I found that they considered an environmental project to go and landscape for the Salvation Army. And the Salvation Army had this place in Manoa that was completely overrun with vegetation, and they wanted more lawn. And so that was an environmental project. So I took exception with that. And I had them out stream cleaning for 2 years, and that sold pretty well. I said, look, we're working on streams that flow into Waikiki where we meet. They're full of pollution, which isn't good for the tourism industry, which is the base of our economy. And I didn't have trouble selling it that way at all. But I got a reputation as being a Sierra Club member. So I worked at a different way. Every quarter, we have a meeting week, a Tuesday, where we go to people's places of business and learn about how they do business. Or we go to somebody's house and just be entertained in a small group. We limit these to 10 people. Or if you have a nonprofit that you want to support, you can take them there and orient them about that nonprofit thing. You don't ask for money from them at that time, but they learn about it. So once a year now, I take them to the Sierra Club office. And because it's downtown and a lot of people are looking for a walking meeting, I get 10 every time for a good sandwich. And they sit there with the state director, and she talks to them about anything that's on her mind. And they find out that Sierra Club is not monstrous, that it has a proper place to do business. And, it's just not the terrible thing that they thought it was. And so that's one way I've introduced environment into my club. But I know that there are people in there, there are grumpy Trumpies in there that, they don't want to hear about it. It might cost them some money and they don't want to spend it. So that's the way it is. And I can understand why advocating, I'm sort of shocked by this writing here. When I read it, I say, my God, this could cause a rebellion. We could lose members over this. If the members find out that the National Foundation is okaying money for such things, why, I wonder if we won't lose some people.
Oh, I think that might happen. There are people who, and people at a fairly high level, past district governors who are ready to walk. And I think, if the terms and conditions on the environmental global grants, that when that language goes public, there are people who are going to be very upset.
Can you send me a copy, Mark, of that information?
Yeah. It's Roz, it's on the Global Grants website. Just go up to,
Okay.
go to the Grant Center and then go to resources.
All
And
right, I get it there.
yeah, it's on the areas of focus statements.
Okay, sounds good. This has been good, but we've lost most of our audience here.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so it's getting late. We better go, but
Yeah.
great conversations. Reese, I think it's cool that you're connected with the Sierra Club. I was going to suggest to Mariko that we invite them to our meetings on Maui. The trouble we have with the Sierra Club on Maui is they hate realtors.
Well, we've had the Sierra Club director speak at our meetings.
Yeah, that's great.
She gets invited about every 3 or 4 years. And I always, I want them to do a good job. So do you know who Pam Chambers is?
Yes.
She's a speaking coach. So I pay for them to go to a session with Pam Chambers and sharpen up their talk. And by the time they get to the speaking platform at our club, they do a really hot job and they've learned how to speak. So
oh yeah, They do great on Maui. They're great. I mean, they're probably the most influential political group on the island.
Lucienne.
Yes,
Lucienne is wonderful.
that's Maui tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, she's also Sierra Club, big
Also
time.
Sierra Club. Yes, yes, yes. So anyway, let's wrap this up and we'll meet again soon. Is that okay with everyone?
For sure.
Okay. Good night. Take care. Merry Christmas if I don't see you.
Night, everybody. Merry Christmas and stay safe.
Happy
Okay.
holidays.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.